Chapter 3. The groom stood patiently near the two horses. He handed Hunter the reins when Hunter and Katy reached the stables, then he went back to his chores of pitching hay to the 6 other horses. These were Lysel's prize steeds. He gave Hunter and Devon their offspring. Katy held the face of the brown and white-faced mare. Then she stood looking into its eyes. She turned to Hunter's beautiful black stallion. Brushing her hand along its body, the horse calmed. "He likes you." I've never seen him react to a human like that. Hunter gave himself away when he mentioned human. She had eyes only for Hunter and the beautiful horses. "Aren't you a human?" That's a strange way to refer to people. Hunter just smiled and helped Katy across the saddle and took the reins of his horse and Katy's, leading them out of the stall and into the opening. "I can see you like horses, and especially this one," Hunter said. "Yes, I do." Katy leaned forward and kissed the horse on its mane. "Do you want her? I'll make you a gift of her." "I can't accept a horse. She's beautiful and looks expensive, and I have no place to put her, and if I did, I can't afford to feed her." "You can keep the mare here until you have a place. She has a colt." "That doesn't make sense. I may never be able to afford her, and I don't want to take her from her colt. I'm going off to college for maybe 6 years if I'm lucky, or 8 if I'm not." Hunter jumped on his black mount, then turned and faced Katy with a closed smile. "How did you do that? You are so quick. I barely saw you." "It's all my pent-up energy, and have you noticed my muscles?" he said, bragging like a teenage boy trying to impress a girl. He looked at Katy, smiling and showing his white teeth, and leaned his long body into her and kissed her. She surprisingly kissed him back. Her heated kiss reached deep down inside him, and he felt himself hard for the second time at being in Katy's presence. Hunter couldn't fathom what was happening to him, but it felt good. Too good. He placed his long tongue in her mouth, and she began sucking it. It was his first kiss, a French kiss that he and Devon had discussed at night when they couldn't sleep. His first touch of a female's warm, soft lips. It was his first feeling of arousal, just from a kiss. Katy pulled away from him. "This is your first kiss." How did she know? He wanted this kiss to be mature, but he had messed that up. Devon had said that it wasn't cool to let a girl that he liked know that he was an amateur. That was why it was important to practice first, especially with girls he didn't find attractive, but Hunter thought that was awful. Why kiss a girl just to kiss her? "No. I've kissed many girls before you," Hunter said, trying not to disclose how inexperienced he really is. He had spent his few teenage years with his father, hunting and learning to swim, learning about nature. But never learning the things that mattered, he thought. This was something he needed to learn, because it was pleasurable as much as hunting, and much more now that he had a chance to experience it. They didn't teach kissing in the books he was required to read by the old tutor. "That old man can't remember when he had his first or last kiss," Devon had said to Hunter. That was why Hunter needed to get out into the world and learn about being a werewolf, and about being a human. Hunter would learn none of that in books. There were no books on sexuality in the library. He could see himself relaxing around the house with Katy enjoying her kisses, going to the movies instead of hunting. Maybe he should consider going to college with her. Hunter's life had changed with that one kiss, and Katy's life had changed the day they set eyes on each other. Devon had asked Hunter to accompany him into town for a date with the local girls, but he didn't have time to go into town and prowl for girls. He was busy learning about nature with Wilder. There was a lesson about nature his father and mother had neglected to tell him about. Devon, on the other hand, had gone on dates with females, and brought back stories about how he had made love to 2 girls at one time, and watched as the 2 girls kissed each other's bodies. Hunter thought Devon had made that up. He couldn't imagine why it was interesting to see 2 girls kiss each other. Hunter didn't understand the power of a kiss by a girl he was attracted to, until now. That profound need he felt made him understand that Devon had reported to him the truth, that there was more to life than hunting and fishing, exploring the forest, and living like his ancestors. There was another life out there just waiting for him, and it was as satisfying and pleasurable as any he had ever known. The two newly bound lovers rode in silence as Hunter revisited the feeling he had received from his life-changing kiss from Katy. When they stopped in a meadow near a lake overlooking pine trees, catching a glimpse of the snow-capped mountains, Katy said, "I kissed a boy once, but I never felt like this." "Did you feel warm inside, your heart pounding, and an urge to be in an intimate way when you kissed your first girl?" "Not exactly, but I feel that way about you," Hunter said, smiling, knowing full well that her kiss was the first and best feeling he had ever had. "I want to be alone with you. I want to hold you in my arms and kiss you, but not from a horse," Hunter said, his blue eyes hypnotizing her. "Follow me," Hunter said. He took her horse by the reins. Without a thought, Hunter's horse galloped for the shed Devon used when girls visited him, and when he didn't want Adrian to see him. Hunter drove his steed fast and dismounted. He waited and helped Katy off her mare, then hit both horses on their rears, sending them trotting back to the stables. He rushed ahead of Katy into the small cabin. He had left her far behind, because he needed to start a fire to get it warm inside. This was his first date. He sought to make it comfortable before she walked inside. Scurrying around the room, he placed some of the books back on a shelf, and found a hidden vase with artificial flowers and stuck that on top. He wanted to make her day unforgettable. Surprisingly, the bedding had been changed, and new pillows were arranged on the daybed. There were new rugs on the floor. New paint on the walls. All the shelves contained books, and gardening tools didn't have a speck of dust. He noticed pictures on the wall. Pictures of flowers. Wildflowers. He had never been in the shed, but he liked what he saw. The room has a cozy, warm feel to it, he thought, as he placed some newspapers in the fireplace to get the fire started. Then he added some twigs, and finally he stacked wood on top, and lit the newspapers and dry moss with matches he found on a table. He felt proud that he could build a fire so quickly, but a werewolf had to learn that he might not have a fireplace and matches to keep him warm, his father Wilder had cautioned him. By the time the fire roared, Katy was standing in the doorway, looking at him with a large smile. "You are certainly an enthusiastic man." Hunter liked that Katy saw him as a man. All his parents saw was an impetuous pup who needed more time to grow up and learn about life, but he was beginning to learn, and he was enjoying his lessons. Not all Hunter's lessons about life would be as enjoyable and pleasurable as this one. As Hunter stooped by the fire to place a larger log on top, Katy closed the door and stood near the daybed. She sat there placing her hand in her lap, then patting a spot that she wanted Hunter to occupy. That spot was near her. He sprang up and sat close, and their eyes locked. They glanced at each other. Hunter leaned in for another earth-shattering kiss, and he wasn't disappointed. When their lips came together, a sensuous light passed between them. His breathing stopped, his heart raced, and his body ached for her touch. It was an intense feeling where he unlocked his heart and soul, and gave them to her. His lips brushed hers, trailing a sensuous path as she opened her mouth, giving out a moan. His manhood rose in response to her erotic cry into his mouth. Katy's lips never left his mouth as she began to undress him, starting with his t-shirt. Although she thought it strange that he should wear something light in the spring thaw, she didn't question it, because of her youthful desire for his body. Reaching and helping him pull it over his head was the first time they parted their lips, and then his mouth touched hers again, caressing her lips before he thrust his long tongue down her throat. Katy gasped for breath, breathing into Hunter's mouth. She was lost when his body embraced her. His body felt exceptionally warm, much more than any boy she had ever met or came into contact with. He was well developed and hard, craving her hands over it. She had never seen a body of such maturity on a man that young. She caressed his wide shoulders as she gave in, and Hunter took control of her mouth. Now Hunter had learned how to kiss a female, and he would not soon forget. Just one more lesson he would learn, and this one wasn't painful. In fact, it was the best lesson of his life. His body flooded with desire. His passion for Katy inched through deep down to harden him. He proceeded to unbutton her blouse with his long fingers, and when it was open and she had discarded it on top of his shirt, he sat back and watched her. They both lost all reason, and they became enthralled with each other. "Haven't you seen breasts before?" she said, looking up at his face, his eyes fixed on her hard breasts and nipples as a flare of desire sprang into his eyes. No, he hadn't. Not human breasts. She didn't wait for a reply. She placed his warm hands on her breasts, and from the chill in the air he watched as her nipples sprang forth into hard pebbles. Slowly, he raised his fingers and touched them as if they were fragile and could be broken. She looked up at him, and they locked eyes once more. Each saw the other one's passion burst forth hungrily. Each felt the other one's needs, wants, and desires. His natural instinct was to kiss her breasts. He lowered his head, and when his warm lips touched her flesh, she raked her fingers through his fine curly long hair. The feeling of sucking her nipples resonated throughout his body, and he knew that Katy enjoyed it as much as he enjoyed doing it. She placed her hand on his penis and stroked it through his jeans, then she unbuttoned his jeans one button at a time as Hunter continued to suck her nipples. She reached and took his cock into her hands, and she gasped at the feel of it. "You're so big. I've never known a man could have such a large penis." Hunter never knew that there was anything smaller. His wasn't that big, he thought. His father and uncles were as large or larger. Even his brother Devin was about his size, so he thought nothing of her adoration for his penis. Katy began stroking it in her hand, up and down as he kissed her, and then warm fluid escaped. He knew then it was time to take off his pants. He didn't know what was happening to him, but Devin has said this would happen with a woman, but he had dismissed Devin's conversation. Hunter stood and dropped his pants to the floor. Standing naked, he felt free. He wasn't ashamed. He didn't know that he should be ashamed. He was acting naturally, as natural and free as the animals he had seen in the forest. Natural like the werewolf he was. He was born to roam the forests, and he was born to make love to Katy. She enjoyed his body, and he was turned on and aroused by her. Now he understood what his father had said. "One day you will find your true mate, and there will never be another one for you. When I met your mother, she was the one I would die for, the one I would kill for, and the one to have my offspring by," his father had said in passing, when he tried to make Devin and Hunter understand that they had time to find the one, but they had to learn how to survive first as werewolves. It was easier being a man, but being a werewolf was more complicated, Wilder explained, more than they would ever know. "You have to walk in both worlds and master them one at a time," Wilder had said to Hunter and Devin. Standing naked beside Hunter, Katy lay on the bed. He stood looking at her, curious. Her body captivated his young, virile body. She took his hand and he climbed over her, making sure he held his weight above her with his fist buried on both sides. Leaning over her, he propped his arms above her head, and she placed her hand on his large manhood and placed it at the rim of her fleshy, warm, tight opening. "I'm a virgin," Katy said, gazing into Hunter's large blue eyes. Hunter had a vague idea of what a virgin was. He remembered hearing Devin say to him, "It's difficult with a virgin because they're tight." "I don't want to hurt you, Katy," he said, whispering. "I want you. The pain will go away. I want this with you. I want you to be my first," she said, her cool green eyes looking up in his handsome face. Katy had expressed her feelings to Hunter, but he didn't want her to know how inexperienced he was with girls. When his crown set over her vagina, she lifted her hips and he gave a small push and managed to place the head inside. She opened her mouth with a groan, raising her hips up and down into him as he pushed more of him into the softest of flesh, and bursting through where he felt her insides tightening around his enormous penis. You're wonderful, Hunter said, his voice quiet, his tone loving. And you're so big, Katy moaned with pleasure, her eyes meeting his overpowering crystal blues. I'm so sorry. I'm not, Katy said with a smile, and tightened her arms around Hunter's neck as she casually raked her fingers up and down his back. Make one push and it won't hurt at all. With one hard push into Katy, she bit his lip, groaning with painful satisfaction. The bite wasn't significant. It didn't deter Hunter at all. It only served to arouse him, and he began to slowly and carefully hammer into her, until all of his long hard cock was resting comfortably in her warm small opening. Katy began to gyrate on it, and moved her hips up and down, dragging her nails into his back. Oh Hunter, I've never felt like this before. Neither have I. I'm ready to burst, and I want you to enjoy that wonderful feeling with me. He carefully dipped his body into her, and her tight muscles in her soft warm opening wrapped around his penis. She held him tight, biting into his shoulder at each feeling of pain, then they both had an orgasm together. When it was over, he rolled to the side, held Katy in his arms, and they fell asleep. Was it the warmth of the room and the long horse ride that had caused them to fall asleep in each other's arms? Was it the fresh young love of two teenagers that caused them to think that they were doing nothing wrong? And so they lay in each other's arms sleeping. Was it their youth and passion for each other that made them unaware that their lives were about to change? When they awoke, they kissed each other. We should get back now. Robert will be looking for us, especially since the horses are in the stalls, and we're nowhere to be seen, Hunter said, standing and pulling up his jeans. I want to stay here with you, Katy whispered to Hunter. I wish we could, but you're a teenager and I'm older than you, and now I'm a man. If that makes you a man, then I'm a woman, Katy said playfully, pulling at Hunter's jeans, trying to make him return to bed. Your brother is probably looking around the ranch for you. He will be angry with me. Let him look. Let him be angry, she said, a rebellious tone to her voice. Come on, Katy. He must not find us here like this. He warned me to stay away from you. Hunter handed Katy her blouse and jeans. She had scampered into her bikini underwear. Her coat lay in a chair, where she had dropped it when she walked into the shed. Listen to him, Katy. Your name is Katy, a voice said. An ominous, strange, deep voice came from the open door. Standing in the doorway, an arrogant, tall figure with his head upright and a smirk on his lips prowled slowly to them. Who are you? Hunter said, turning quickly on hearing the voice. Hunter stood in front of Katy to cover her nakedness and to protect her. I'm Bane. Don't you recognize me, Wilder? I'm not Wilder. He's my father, but I know that name, and I'm not afraid of you. You should be, Bane said, walking inside the room. Bane moved closer, his eyes traveling around the room quickly, like the predator he was. He circled Hunter, glancing at him in disbelief. Hunter watched and moved with him as Hunter looked for an attack. So, you are the yearling of Wilder and Adrian. Where is my mother? Hunter said, out of desperation and anger. Your father has her, and I want her back. Bane lifted his head up and to the side, getting a glance of Katy. What is he talking about? Katy said, not following the conversation. Bane glanced up at Katy with obvious disdain. Quiet female. Katy wasn't used to men talking to her a certain way, but she had been raised by her brother, and she had a certain reverence for men, especially if they were older than she was. Don't talk to her like that, Hunter said, his voice loud and protective. Bane's silence said it all, because in a flash he raised his hand and hit Hunter with a blow he had never felt before. The blow threw him across the room, where he staggered, hitting the shelves of books which fell and scattered to the floor. Because of natural instincts and because of defense of Katy, Hunter had shifted into a large white wolf, with his fangs extending out of his mouth. He leapt at Bane's neck, with Katy screaming and crouching on the bed in horror, with her hands wrapped around her legs. Bane never shifted. He recognized a young, inexperienced pup who had just grown into his werewolf body with fangs not fully developed. Bane knew Hunter was no match for a werewolf like himself. There was no benefit in killing Adrian's son. Hunter sprang, sinking his teeth into Bane's neck. Bane swatted him off with his large hands. It was a superficial wound which hardly fazed him. It just pissed him off. Bane, reaching to his side, pulled out a muzzle and leather strap from his knapsack, hooking Hunter with it, driving him to the floor. It became difficult for Hunter to shift, and he remained the white wolf, only now he had on a muzzle over his face to keep him from causing Bane any more trouble. Hunter felt demoralized, as if he was a dog. My fight is not with Adrian's son. It's with your father. If you stop attacking me, I will let you go. Katy, confused, couldn't speak. She closed her eyes, put her head on her knees, and cried. Hunter watched her with pain in his eyes. He couldn't do anything to stop Bane. He remembered what his father had said, and now it was coming back to him, but it was too late. Bane had second thoughts. No. I'm not going to let you go. I'm taking you with me. If Wilder doesn't meet me and bring your mother to Alaska, then I'll sell you to the Alaskan wolves. He glanced at Katy. If you stop crying long enough, female, I hope you can relay the message to Wilder because it's important, he said, standing over her, his eyes blazing, making Katy shiver from fright. I don't know Wilder. I've never met him. You can't miss him. He looks like your lover, only older. She glanced at Hunter. Katy was stunned. She couldn't fathom what had just happened. 1 minute he was a man, and the next he was a large white wolf. She couldn't believe her eyes. Bane made a motion to leave the cabin. He pulled at the leather strap, but Hunter resisted, dragging his paws, holding on to the rug. Then Bane casually pulled out a taser and shocked him. Hunter's tongue lolled out of his mouth, and he collapsed on the floor. Bane picked him up and threw him over his shoulder like a large white sack and left, closing the door behind as Katy shuddered in a corner of the bed, bracing her body against the wall. Katy was in such hysterics that she stayed in the same spot. She was crying over and over because she was unclear about what she had seen, and because Hunter was gone and he was a large wolf. At first, she thought she was having hallucinations. It wasn't a hallucination when he made love to her. He was a man, not a wolf. Now he was a wolf. When she finally composed herself, the door to the shed flew open. Why are you out here alone, Katy, and half-dressed? Robert walked close to her. You've been crying. Your eyes are swollen and red. Did Hunter do anything to you? Robert's voice echoed through the room. He saw the books on the floor. He stepped around the books and pictures to get close to Katy to comfort her. He passed his hand over her hair and brought her face up so he could look into her eyes. She shook her head, answering his question, pulling the cover over her body. I saw Hunter change into a wolf. A large white one with blue eyes. Robert sat beside her on the bed. I thought better of Hunter. I wanted to spare you that picture until you were older. Spare me what? These people are not what you think. They are werewolves, and I'm married to a female werewolf. This would have been hard for Katy to digest if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes. You don't understand, Robert. It's not that I'm upset over that, but someone used a taser on Hunter and took him. He was still a wolf, her voice broke as she uttered those words. Robert put his hands to his head and shut his eyes for a few minutes. Now he has Adrian and Hunter. I will never get my Mina back, he sighed. I don't think he has Adrian. He said something about her being with Wilder. He said to tell him that Bane wants Adrian, and if he doesn't get her, then he's selling Hunter to the Alaskan wolves. Katy had been coherent enough to remember all that Bane had said, and she would never forget what she had seen.